Well, hello everybody. We have a little group today, and it's hard to know how many people will show up when at these, but I'll start talking and doing the intro, and I imagine a few more people will come in. So welcome. My name is Aaron. Also, this session is going to be recorded, so if you want to be not included in any on like marketing materials or videos or shared content, just let me know sometime, either in DMs or something like that. So my name is Aaron. I helped found this little organization called Dharma Gates about a couple years ago. The mission is to make the deeper end of meditation practice and sort of different contemplative tools associated with it accessible to young people. And so I and we consider these tools extremely valuable to help us learn to face the kinds of challenges that we will be facing in our lifetimes. And so hope you come to experiment with this and perceive this in your own life too. And so with that, all of our events are designed to be a gateway experience. And so keep in mind as you come to this event or come to other Dharma Gates events that we want all of these to be an invitation and an offering to make these practices a part of your life. And we want to support you in that in any way that you're called. So we have several different ways to get more involved. But one of the main things we're doing right now in COVID times is offering an advising service. So if you're interested in retreats or residency or any way to make your practice more of a part of your life, we want to help you with that. You can meet with us one-on-one and talk about what's going on for you and what options are out there for monastic training or any other kind of deeper practice. So with that, we also encourage you to come to the other events in this series, and we'll have more events going forward. If you weren't on our newsletter before, you will be now, and you'll find out about future events there, and you can share and invite friends. We've had almost all of our promotion that has actually worked has been word of mouth and people inviting friends. So I encourage you to do that as you enjoy the sessions. And yeah, we're excited to have Roshi Diane here with us today. As many of you know, we're very passionate about interpersonal practice. We do a lot of circling at our events, and to us, this is a very powerful way. This sort of bringing contemplative practice into relationship is a very powerful way to apply these tools to the world, to work in the world. And Roshi Diane, more than most people alive, has done an extraordinary amount of work at this intersection of both very, very deep contemplative practice and very direct work to help mediation and help change making and help resolve conflict between people, and brings these two fields together in her work very beautifully. So we're excited to have her here. Yeah, with that, I'll hand it over to you, Roshi Diane. And yep.
Thank you, everyone. So we're an intimate group, which makes it. And thank you, Aaron, for having me and for reaching out. It's a great pleasure to be with everyone today. So what would be great for me is, given how small we are, could I just hear who you are, where you're from, and your interest in being here today? Maybe start with you, Aaron.
Okay, my name is Aaron. I live in Vermont at a meditation center called the Monastic Academy. I'm interested in this because I'm interested in Dharma Gates as the mission, and I'm also interested in how to be with and respond skillfully to highly triggering like people and events and situations, and not cause harm in those situations, which is very difficult in my experience. Right? Also very easy to like withdraw and not engage. And I want to learn how to do neither of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great, great, thank you. Is it Lindsay? Yeah, I think Lindsay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Lindsay. I live in Woodstock, New York, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I have been really interested in nonviolent communication for a long time, and have been a student of that practice, and now a teacher.
Oh,
And
great. Great.
yeah, so when I saw this advertised, I was really excited about the way that you've been immersed in these worlds of compassionate communication and Zen, and those are my two highest interests.
All
So,
right. Awesome. We have that in common. That's great. That's great. Hi, Michaela.
Hello, my name is Michaela. I'm from Amherst, Massachusetts. I'm currently in Maine, and I'm really excited to be here. I've been thinking a lot about, especially in quarantine, living with the same small group of people for a very long time, and is not an experience I've had in this way before. And I've been noticing like the new sort of conversational dynamics or just ways of being that have come up, and I'm excited to like root in relating from a like more heart-centered place, I guess.
Fair enough. Good. Good. Excellent. How about you, Miles?
Hey there, everyone. I'm from New York City. I'm currently living in upstate New York, Rosendale. And yeah, I guess I've been extremely curious about Dharma for the last 10 years or so, and a fair amount of classical meditation practice. And I got really interested in circling and different kinds of interpersonal meditation over the last few years. So I feel super lucky to be here on the call with all of you, and then really to have Roshi Diane here, because I've been sort of watching your work from afar for a while, so
Oh, thank you.
I'm very lucky.
Great. Thank you, Miles. Appreciate that. Ellen or Elin? How do you say it?
Aileen,
Hi, Elin. How are you?
hi. I'm currently living in Princeton, and I got into Dharma Gates as an ambassador and have been participating in events for the past couple of months. And I'm following with this whole practice series.
Oh, great. Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So everybody's from the Northeast in the States so far, right? You're all up in the... Good. Go ahead, Jesse.
I'm in Berlin, Germany, but I grew up in British Columbia, Canada.
Okay.
And I barely know what the topic is, but I remember that I wanted to do a retreat with you, Diane.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah.
this was a chance to see you. So,
Oh, great.
Just for an hour. Thank
Great.
you.
Great. It's nice to be with you too. It'd be nice to get to know you. Hi, Christian.
Hello, my name is Christian. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I learned about Dharma Gates through the Stoa and Peter Limberg. There's like a whole philosophy community there in Toronto. So got there from there. And I'm really interested in exploring conversational modalities. I think they've done a lot in terms of my mental health and for other people's mental health as well. And that's something I'm really passionate about.
Okay, good. Good. We can explore all of this. Go ahead, Jonas. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm Jonas. I'm calling from Amherst, Mass. I lived at the Monastic Academy with Aaron this summer, and I go to Dharma Gates events whenever I can. One thing in my practice I've been working on, like really lately, has been like continuity of practice, and I've noticed I'll get thrown all over the place when I'm in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been doing some circling, authentic relating, and just trying to keep that thread going since I left the monastic academy at the end of the summer. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Great. Good. So I'm hearing some similarities around the. I think that's my brother. Can you guys tolerate it if I think he spontaneously showed up at my house. Well, I think I'll ignore him actually. Hopefully he'll just go away. All right, go ahead, Rose.
Hi. So I learned about Dharma Gates through Miles and met Aaron through Miles as well. And I guess the intention of growing compassion has been really important to me for the last couple months. I'm doing a compassion cultivation training right now with Miles actually. And it's been really wonderful to be kind of discussing compassion for all beings, especially right now in our political climate. And yeah, so yeah, I'm excited for what. Yeah, I'm excited for this.
Great, beautiful, beautiful. So let's see. There's somebody on the iPhone. Do you want to say hi? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. What's your name?
Can you all hear me? So I joined the call a little bit late. I don't know if there was a prompt or a question, but could you repeat that for me, please?
Well, we're a relatively small group, so I thought it might be nice just to see everyone who's on the call and just tell us where you're at and also what brought you to the call.
Okay, sure. So my name is Jay McKenzie. I became familiar with Dharma Gates through making the acquaintance of Aaron at the Monastic Academy. I was a visitor there for a few weeks in kind of late spring of this year. And I participated in an event that Aaron did a few weeks ago on the Stoa, talking about Dharma Gates, and it just seemed like something I would like to learn more about, and that's my main reason for being here. This is my first event I've done with this group, so yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, do you know Aaron? Have you met Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and just bring ourselves into the moment. So if you'd find an upright sitting posture, please. And you can allow your awareness to just drop into your abdomen by moving side to side, back and forth. And if you want to circle around on your sits bones and pelvis, just allowing your attention to flow towards gravity, you might say. And then come to stillness. And with 3 breaths, I'd like to invite you to let go of the past. And with 3 more breaths, let's release the thoughts of the future. Allow yourself to simply be here and now. And in this moment, allow your heart center to expand. And maybe marvel that in the course of our evolution, that we've moved from needing to protect the heart to actually opening and becoming available through the heart. And now allow yourself for a moment just to feel the boundless space of an open mind, open heart, grounded and relaxed body. And just for a moment, reflect on the motivation that we're all here to awaken, and from a developmental or evolutionary view, to grow, to become more, to actually realize more of this experience of being a human being. So what I'm hoping to explore with you is, as Erin said, I am a mediator. Oh, and thank you. I'm a mediator and a meditator. And the theme, when I started doing conflict resolution work, it was really because growing up in my own family, I think I just had this kind of deep longing to see people be able to share their perspectives and engage their differences and kind of come out on the other side of that. And I just didn't witness a lot of that growing up. There was a lot of passion in my household and vitality, but usually it burned hot. And I very, very rarely got to see people actually engage their differences and come out in a coherent state. It was always just have a fight, blow out the door, and then come back. So I think that was just something that I cared about without consciously being aware of it. And then I also had the experience of, in my youth, when I was 17, 7 of my friends died in a very short period of time. I grew up in the West Desert of Utah, grew up in the mountains and riding horses a lot. And when I was 17, I had 4 friends killed in a light plane together who were my best friends. I lost another friend in an automobile accident. Another friend, believe it or not, was killed in a knife fight, which the circumstances were just very strange. And then another brother of my very good friend who committed suicide. So in this very short period of time, I was just kind of like confronted, not only by the fact that we die, but the fact that we also suffer so much from the insights that the Buddha himself had. We suffer from sickness, and whether it's mental or emotional, and we suffer from old age, and we also suffer from the fact that we and everything we love will pass. And so the teaching of impermanence and the kind of confrontation with impermanence was very important to me as a young woman. And I think I kind of came to the university with very deep existential questions. And even though I had been raised in a Christian community, my parents weren't devout in any way. And so I really felt, I suppose, the permission in a way to kind of explore the traditions. And I started out by studying philosophy. And I think without knowing it, something about, now I can put language to it and say that the dualistic split of philosophy, where we talk about it rather than I, wasn't satisfying to me. And so I just very naturally moved towards a contemplative practice, and I read Chogyam Trungpa's work, and he was still alive at the time, and I went to Naropa Institute, and there was something about the experience of meditation where I felt that split in the mind dissolve, or that separation, and had a very coherent experience of, I would say, the language of one with all things is tired and a little bit, I don't know, sometimes it sounds corny to my ear, just a little bit. But basically I felt the non-separation, the state of non-separation, which is really what the Buddha himself came to see through his meditation practice. That where there's separation, there's generally stress or dukkha or suffering, and that when we can quiet the mind and become coherent in our own experience, in our own body, with our own speech, our thoughts, and the environment, that we have an access to natural, what we might call self-fulfilling well-being, simply from the state of being. Because we're not busy trying to get it, we're not busy trying to get rid of it, we're not busy trying to accomplish it or overcome it, we simply are it. And I think I intuitively experienced that from the very beginning in meditation. And so I've been a lifelong practitioner. Later on, after I studied conflict resolution, I started to see that mediate and meditate were basically the same activity. And without knowing it, I was doing the same thing. When I was sitting, I was experiencing a unitive kind of state. And when I was working with disputing people or people in conflict, I was actively engaged in difference and struggle and negotiations and assisting people in coming into oneness, again, into agreement. So suddenly, it dawned on me like 3 years ago, I've been doing mediation meditation, hence the root word, it's like, it took me a long time to get that I was doing the same thing. So, that's been kind of my deep inquiry. And in Zen, we say, the mind of nirvana is easy to accomplish. It's the mind of difference that's difficult to attain. And when you talk about your conversations and how when you're, letting down your defensiveness and becoming present and speaking to one another without filters and reflecting, and in a certain way, you're kind of blending, if you will, becoming one, becoming the same through listening and through that kind of exchange. And then the brain, of course, responds to that. It feels safe, and serotonin and dopamine and those feel-good hormones, oxytocin, they're all available because there's that quality of non-separation is actually a quality that has very positive experiences in the body. There's nothing better than looking at a really relaxed baby, or when your pet just kind of rolls over on its back like he just fell off the ceiling and he's just expanded and chill and relaxed. Like that's just a feel-good experience. Everybody wants that. Difference is quite different in the brain and in the nervous system. I mean, as soon as we're such sensitive and astute creatures for picking up what is dangerous, in the same way that we let down when it's safe, when we belong, when things are familiar, the minute we sense difference, as you know, the chemistry of the brain begins to change, right? There's all of a sudden, you start to drip a little bit of adrenaline, some cortisol, the heart rate increases, and you start to feel some trembling in your limbs. Maybe there's a grip in the solar plexus. You might feel a little bit of tension in the back of your neck. And all of that is designed to help you protect yourself or get away from danger. So difference, whether it's in the bush, difference, whether it's in a group of people that you're not familiar with, whenever we perceive difference, there's almost an attendant experience that it could be threatening. And when we start to experience threat, it's just absolutely a different experience, which is why we say the mind of nirvana is easy. All you got to do is just lower the separation, right? But the mind of difference is difficult to inhabit. Every one of you who mentioned being triggered are talking about when the nervous system is excited. How do I deal with that? Because I'm in the grip of a very age-old intelligence that is super interested in protecting me, even when I can cognitively ascertain that I'm not threatened or that something in my body-mind is picking up threat. And so because of that, you are dealing with a whole dose of stress hormones that you kind of have to get a grip on in order to be able to continue, if you will. And I've always thought that it's super fascinating that, it's one thing if you're like threatened in a parking lot at night or there's a dog on the street that's growling at you. It's another thing when your boyfriend just says something that all of a sudden you're super defensive, or the woman you're seeing, or you know, your partner, whoever it happens to be, like there's just a little slight, a little egoic, you know, jab, and your body reacts exactly the same. You know, now your cognition is mediating it to some degree because, hey, what did you mean by that? And why do you have to give me that experience? But in fact, the oldest part of your body is doing exactly the same thing. It's basically preparing you for fight or flight. So my work in conversation is a lot about how do we work with the intelligence of our nervous system. And one of the weaknesses these days is that people have all kinds of really dicey conversations about diversity, social justice conversations, and nobody, from my perspective, takes care of people's bodies very well when they're doing it. Hear, hear? Is that a +1? Is that what I? So,
yes.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes people will even go so far as to say to take care of the body is to actually promote oppression. And nothing could be further from the truth. Human beings are super, super sensitive to each other. We perform extremely well when we feel safe and coherent with one another. And it gets much harder as we differentiate. And when we feel threatened, we literally stop learning. When we're threatened, access to the prefrontal cortex is cut off, and you literally can't remember what you like about people. Like as soon as you're dripping just enough stress hormones, you have to cognitively say to yourself, I like them, we have a history, we're friends. Everything in your body is telling you that they're not okay. Have you had that experience before? Where you're just like, how in the world can I feel this way about someone who I love? You know, it's like they're completely alien and threatening. And that's simply because you're in the grip of the chemicals. That's all it is. So the question that I always have is, well, how do I work with that as a mediator, as a person teaching meditation? How do I teach people not only to learn how to be highly coherent in sitting practice, in ritual practice, cooking in retreat, taking care of the zendo, all that emphasis on continuity, but what happens when we disagree? What happens when there's something negative going on? What happens when we don't like each other? How do we deal with that? And I've been in many practice communities that do the former really well and do the latter really badly. So that's one of the reasons that I want to work on this and explore this with you today. So is there anything that you want to say right now? Again, we're small, so this is nice. We can just explore a little bit, and then I'll take you through some experiences and you can tell me how it all lands. Questions, comments, anyone?
I'm just so happy you said everything you just said. It feels like so many pieces kind of clicking, and yeah, really refreshing.
All right, good. Well, let's explore. So my teacher, Genpo Roshi, he studied at the Zen Center of Los Angeles with Maizumi Roshi. And do you guys know these Zen? Do you know these Zen teachers in the States? So Genpo Roshi was one of 12 successors of Maizumi's. He studied in Maizumi Roshi. He studied in LA. He originally was from New York. He grew up in Long Beach. He was a long distance swimmer and also an Olympic water polo player. So very, very accomplished athlete, and really, really, really good at going the long haul. Like his session, you could sit with him in session. He had his body was highly integrated, and you know how we have these different kind of images, but the image in Zen of the mountain, his body was like that. He could sit really, really long periods and just stabilize everybody. He was just so great at that. But he was also very innovative. And I think Maizumi Roshi's successors were Bernie Glassman, who was also his successor, and also John Daido-Loori, who started Zen Mountain Monastery I think it's in Woodstock, isn't it? Yeah, so Zen Mountain Monastery, and then that was Daido-Loori's place. And then Bernie Glassman started the Yonkers Bakery, and then he started a thing in Massachusetts that I went to briefly, but they didn't get very far with it, but it was like a conflict resolution place. It was called the House of One People. But then I think that property was sold, and Fleet Mall owns that now. So anyway, Maizumi Roshi had very innovative successors, and he told his successors that for the Dharma to flourish in the West, he wanted them to have confidence in their ability to be creative, because he knew that that Japanese culture is so formal, aesthetic, beautiful, precise, and it isn't going to be the way that Dharma, the Zen from Japan, is going to take root here in the States. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people that hold that traditional practice down really well. My teacher mastered that to the extent that any American ever can, and then but basically got interested in other ways to convey Dharma. So he used a process called voice dialogue, which comes down through the Gestalt kind of Jungian lineage, in order to give you experiences of what we point to in Zen, but that you have to discover in your own experience. So I'm going to use that just to facilitate you right now, and so we can have an experience of what I'm talking about. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to identify with a certain part of yourself. And when I do that, I just simply want you to stop being Miles or stop being Jonas or Rose, and just be that state of mind that I asked for, be that quality of mind. And then just notice as you identify with that, what happens in your experience, and we'll just report it out and we'll learn from each other. Okay, so I would like to speak to the voice of sameness, the mind that is the same. And I want you to just feel that, and I'll call on you individually. You can raise your hands because I can see everybody. And I'll just call on you, and just tell me what it is you notice as the mind of sameness. So all you're going to do is identify with sameness and see what you notice. So it's a good convention to say, who am I speaking to? And you can say the mind of sameness. So who am I speaking to? The mind of sameness, great. So as the mind of sameness, what do you notice? And you'll have to unmute yourselves. Jesse?
Everything's the same.
Yes, everything's the same. Exactly.
Everything has the same background to it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And are you the same with all things?
I have the same background.
That's right. You are the same background. Absolutely. Good. All right. So as sameness, you can't get anything wrong, by the way. So just whatever you notice, we'll just notice it together. So Aaron, how about you as the mind of sameness? And then Lindsay.
Kind of an ease or like float.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, an easefulness. Very good. Lindsay, how about you?
I was experiencing this really lovely defenselessness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as the mind of sameness, I don't experience barriers. There's no defensiveness. In fact, I could say that I feel boundless in a way. There's no boundaries. Okay, good. Yeah, Rose.
It's trust. So
Trust.
You asked the question, I think oftentimes I do become slightly defensive and a little bit nervous to share what's happening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, if we're all the same, then it doesn't really matter.
That's right. That's right. Very good. Excellent. So it's quite it seems so simple in a strange way, right? So simple that we don't notice it really. Yeah. Who else had their hand up? Yeah, Ellen.
Neutral equanimity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So as sameness, you could use the word neutral. You could also say I'm unbiased. I'm not for or against anything. There's no better and worse from this perspective. All things are as they are. Excellent. Jonas, how about you?
Like uniform sensations throughout my body.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very good. So uniformity is a nice word, and unity is another word. Those are both words we could use, yeah? Whether it's sensation or perception. You know, I'm not looking at the world and ascertaining, am I safe, am I not? I'm not looking at the world, what do I want, what don't I? I'm not looking at the world saying that's better, that's worse, right? I'm just kind of free of all those discriminations. How awesome is that? Pretty relaxing. you know, when we talk about meditation as a source of peace and serenity, this is really what we're talking about. Because where there's division of any kind, there's always tension. There's always creative or erotic or aggressive, you know, tension. Wherever there's 2 points, there's always tension. And tension is a great thing. Evolution demands it. We can't grow without that. But our deepest nature is free of it. Makes sense? As the mind of sameness, it doesn't even need to make sense. It's better if it doesn't, right? How about you, Christian, as the mind of sameness? What do you notice?
I notice a willingness to sit back.
Yeah. And as the one who sits back, are you in a state of being? Are you in a state of non-interfering? Are you in a state of observation or just detachment or non-attachment? What would you say?
Something that has to do with non-compulsion.
Okay, good, good. I'm not compelled to have to do or be or whatever it, however you want to finish that sentence. Excellent. Non-compulsion. Good. Good. How about you, Michaela? As the mind of sameness, what do you notice?
I'm feeling like a spreading
Mm-hmm.
and a swallowing.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah. So spreading, expansiveness, right? Swallowing, inclusiveness. We talk a lot about inclusiveness these days. This is the natural state of inclusivity. Very good. Very good. So I'm going to speak to a different voice just because it's a cool Zen voice and you might enjoy it. So I would like to speak to the voice of Big Mind. Just call yourself Big Mind for a moment. Let's see what you experience. So who am I speaking to? Big Mind. Great. So as Big Mind, how big are you? Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
About the size of New York State right now.
Great. Good. Good. Go ahead, Aaron. How big are you?
All the way big.
All the way big. Very good. Very good. Jonas, how about you? How big are you?
I'll show you.
Endless. Infinite. Beautiful. Beautiful. Good. So just allow yourself to feel that boundless quality. Right? This is not, I'm not asking to speak to the mind of the self. The self's job is to be limited. Right? But as Big Mind, you're boundless, you're open, you're available. As Big Mind, when were you born? Anybody? Jay, when were you born as Big Mind?
Never.
Exactly.
Always.
Never and always. Absolutely. Sometimes in the Buddhist literature, particularly in the Zen tradition, you'll see the language of the unborn Buddha mind. Not born and not dying. Beautiful. So as this unborn Buddha mind, what do you prefer?
I don't have preferences.
The great way is not difficult. For those who have no preferences, make one distinction, however, and all of heaven and earth are set apart. It's not your job to prefer. You know, the self prefers, and rightly so, right? Other dimensions of who we are prefers, but as Big Mind, you're non-preferring, right? There's no up and down, there's no good and bad, there's no right and wrong. And as the self, when one relinquishes kind of all the preferring of the self and just allows this non-preferring mind, it's deeply satisfying and restful to your nervous system. I'm wondering if you can feel that in your system right now. I'd like to ask you to identify, just to fill the experience out a little bit, I'd like to ask you to identify as big heart and tell me what you notice. So who am I speaking to? Big heart, yeah, good. So just notice any shifts in your body or in your awareness, and tell me what it is you notice when you identify as big heart. Lindsay, and then Eileen, and then Rose.
I feel a sense of grief when I'm connected to Big Heart.
You feel grief, is that what you said? Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, the tenderness of this impermanent world. And there's something tender and poignant and super sad, and yet there's a loving quality to all of it. Eileen, how about you? As big heart, what do you notice?
Attention shifted downwards, and a warmth in the streaming here with heaviness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the heart actually, as big mind, one could say that if you're students of meditation, that the experience of emptiness is very profound. And then when we shift to the heart, we experience both the freedom, the love, and also the sorrow of this incarnation, this existence, this realm of form, and the suffering in the realm of form. Yeah, thank you. How about you, Rose?
Similarly, sadness, grief, shivers, and even like I don't even know if it's grief, but I want to cry, and I don't know if it's good or bad.
Great. That's awesome. Well, yeah. And also I think one thing that might happen too is that as you identify with big heart, some of maybe even the unacknowledged suffering that you happen to be feeling right now in the world is there to be acknowledged. And what is big heart's response to this suffering, to yours and to that of others? What is the response? Maybe one way to state it is, as big heart, is there room for the suffering? Yeah, absolutely. And is there also responsiveness to the suffering? Without compulsion, Christian. Thank God. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, like an urge to tend to it, to not ignore it, but to accept it and then to deal with it.
That's so great. That's so great. And for your generation, when I hear Aaron say, for preparing for the challenges of our generation, I think it's really, really important to cultivate this very deep attitude of the ability to trust, to be present, to be responsive without being compulsive, because there is a little bit of a lot of what we're trying to do is motivated out of a compulsive and fearful relationship to how things are. Would you agree? I don't want to lay that trip on you if it's not true. Okay, good. Okay, so just go ahead and enjoy this. We went through kind of 3 voices to give you slightly different texture. The voice of sameness, the voice of big mind, and the voice of big heart. And in Japanese, Chinese, the word shin or shin is means heart mind. So you can think about big heart mind. All right, are you ready to shift gears, everybody? All right, I would like now to speak to the mind of difference. Tell me about you, and as you do, notice the shift in your body and your state and just all the psychophysical things that happen when you shift to this mind state. So who am I speaking to? The mind of difference. All right, tell me what you notice. Anybody? Yeah, Michaela.
In the mind, everything sort of came back together and created this like straight line of like sort of a teetering edge.
Yep. One distinction, make one distinction, and everything comes into being. You know who experienced that was Helen Keller. You guys know her? She was deaf, dumb, and blind. She was living in an undifferentiated whole, and her teacher started to teach her to read. And she wrote the word water on her hand, and then she put her hand in the water. And for the first time, she distinguished water as separate from everything else. And when she felt that first distinction, everything, all the distinctions became alive at the same moment. So she was running around like touching the ground and pointing to the sky and the fence and the tree, and her teacher was giving her word after word after word after word after word. Right? The world of distinctions. Excellent. So as the mind of distinction or difference, what do you notice? So, oh my gosh, there's so much to notice. Aaron?
I was thinking there's this sort of solidity or tension, like, yeah, that's the best way I could describe it. It's very jagged and solid.
Yeah, there's a lot more tension for sure. What are some of the differences that you notice?
There's like form, like different shaped objects all around me.
Yeah, I notice differences in shape. I notice differences in objects, differences in sounds. I notice differences in sound of people's voices. I notice differences in your clothing. I notice differences in how you listen. I'm noticing all your facial features are different. Oh my gosh, there's so much. It's incredible. And difference is always super exciting until it becomes threatening. So tell me about some other differences that you notice. Anybody an engineer or an architect or a scientist? Yeah, Miles.
I'm not any of those things, but I was noticing feels a lot more normal.
Yeah, feels like what the state I'm normally
mind
in.
of difference.
Yeah.
And more judgmental. And
So one of the things we have to notice is that where there is a difference, there are value judgments, and they almost come hand in hand. So it's one thing to notice that Ellen is wearing red and I'm wearing black and Jonas is wearing white. It's another thing to say, wow, she looks prettier with her red sweater than me, right? Because that's what we do. The minute there's differences, we prefer. And remember, the other state was the state of non-preferring. So differences are just awash with our value judgments. Excellent. Good. What else do you notice? Yes, please, Christian.
I noticed difference in word choice, that I can have like a bunch of other words that I can use to describe this moment.
Yep, that's right. Language is phenomenal for helping us make distinctions. You know, how about you and me and you? How about that difference? How about us and them? That's a big one. How about good and bad? That's a big one. How about Republican and Democrat? Does that help? Jesus. You know, how about old and young? Right? You guys are all under 35, right? So, is this a rich world that we're in? Architecture, science, engineering, everything we do, language, it's all based on how we make distinctions, right? You can't have language if you don't have subject and object. That's why, you know, contemplatives get super silent, right? Because they don't want to use language to make distinctions. Now, what happens in the domain when you experience difference in other humans? So let's focus on the difference that you experience with other human beings. Anybody? What do you notice? Aaron?
And it causes usually either attraction or repulsion.
Yeah. Powerful forces. That's right. I'm either for or against, that's for sure. Good. Jonas, what do you notice?
One thought I had as you were asking that question was like, I wonder what Diane is going to teach me.
Aha, very
today.
good. Excellent, excellent. That's so interesting, what I'm going to teach you. Yeah, so the difference becomes kind of a certain kind of polarity, and then our roles become a little bit fixed. Excellent, as opposed to what are you going to be offering to me today? Good. What else do you notice with all these differences with other people? Jay.
I'm noticing myself make comparisons
Mm-hmm.
without even thinking about it.
Yeah, in the same way we make value judgments, we compare ourselves automatically. Absolutely. And then we see differences in race, we see differences in gender, we see differences in culture, we see differences in history of pain, history of oppression, difference. They're endless. Differences are infinite in the same way sameness is infinite. Go ahead, Christian.
I was gonna say like personal experience, getting that story of what made you think of that opinion, or where did that come from?
Yeah, that's right. What's the source of that difference, that opinion, that statement? So one thing to think about is the mind of sameness and the mind of difference. Which one is true? You're not going to make that, let me make that distinction. Good move. Good move. True. Excellent. Very good. So let me speak to the mind of same and different. You're freely, we call it in Zen, we call it freely functioning mind, the mind of sameness and difference. What do you notice? Lindsay.
There's something playful happening for me when I am sitting with both. Like it's, there's like a dance happening between them.
Very good. Very good. Michaela, how about you? Sameness and difference.
I was feeling a very similar like feeling of childishness, or like a little bit mischievous of like, ha ha ha, I can do all these things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we use the word in Zen, the word freedom is really an important word in the tradition. There's a fundamental freedom when you realize, oh my gosh, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the play of form in which things are all utterly the same, and I can be tremendously creative, like the universe itself. That's pretty remarkable. That curious, playful. Trungpa Rinpoche, who was my first meditation teacher, said the enlightened ones are always the most playful. As the mind of sameness and difference, what do you notice? Jonah.
Huh. I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. That's just fine. Christian.
I feel balanced.
Do you want to say more?
That there are times when I could see sameness, and then there's times where I can have difference, but be accepting of both.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of where you're putting your attention. And when you learn to put your attention in both domains at once, then there is a quality of freedom with being able, because some people, they have a very powerful experience of sameness, and then they don't want it to leave, right? And they kind of hold on to it. And it's often said in our tradition that it's the teacher's job to help people move out of that, because people get very attached to that state. And it's okay to deepen that state and stay in retreat for long periods of time. But eventually your job, at least in the Mahayana tradition, your job is actually to return to the marketplace and to offer freely what you have to the world. Your gifts, your insights, your talents, your practice, really. You know, what good is your practice in a cave? Unless that's really your calling, you know, that's what you're doing is that. Excellent. Very good. So when you're having Thanksgiving with your family, are you the same or are you different? A healthy functioning family is always both, right? So let's think about human development for a moment. So evolution is defined, well, human development. Do you guys know Robert Keegan's work from Harvard? He's in the adult development. Good. Yeah, so he defines basically development as when the subject of one level of development becomes the object of the subject of the next level of development. So for instance, you're embedded in your family, you're entirely the same. You know, the idea that you would even be different when you're 9 or you're 10 or you're 11, it never even comes up. You are your family, right? You are your parents, you're all. And then all of a sudden this thing sets in right around 12 or 13 where suddenly you start to feel different, right? And like parents will notice that their child now starts to stand away from them, right? And they identify with their peers, and the sameness is with their peers and not with their parents. And so this whole process of differentiation sets in which there's the freedom now for them to become uniquely who they want to be. And now we can get hung up by being too enmeshed, and we can also get hung up by being too differentiated. But healthy development means that we can function freely in a context in which we're the same and which we're different, and that the relaxation of being the same is there, and then the feisty, energetic quality that requires us to grow can be there. And so we always want to be experiencing ourselves as same and different. And you can put your attention on listening, which always creates sameness, or you can put your attention on asserting your points of view, which creates difference and energy. And then you realize, oh, I have 2 different skills. If I want to become more the same, I just tune in and listen and join. And if I want to generate energy and excitement and grapple and maybe even have a fight, then I'm going to interject difference and really focus on the difference. So you have that choice of how much you want to merge and how much you want to differentiate. And differentiation is exciting until it's too much tension and threatening. And sameness is relieving, is peaceful until it's. So I think that that's kind of the end of what I wanted to share with you. So I think I'll just pull that little piece to a close. Tell you thank you for taking that journey. And then we can maybe get some questions or whatever interests you. what we just explored.
I think we missed about a sentence, and I don't know what that sentence was.
Be nice to your mom and dad. No, I don't know what I said. Be the same as them. You don't have to keep being different.
I'm really curious how we, you know, how you practice with this. Is it just a matter of like bringing these different minds to mind and kind of noticing more when you're coming from one place or another, experimenting with actually invoking one or another?
I'm going to put my the link to, you can buy this on Amazon, not on Amazon, but you can buy this directly from Shambhala if you prefer, but I'm just going to send you the link on Amazon because it's easy. And so basically this is the link to Compassionate Conversations, which is the book that that I wrote with two young students of mine, Gabe Wilson, who's both Brazilian and American. His father's African American. And then also Kimberly Lowe, she's from the UK. She's of Chinese descent. And so we're basically taking up this whole question of sameness and difference in conversation. And how do we work with it? So, as I said a minute ago, Miles, the most important skill in conversation is the skill of listening. And when we really drop, and you guys know this from how many of you do circling practice with Aaron? I mean, you guys are probably really, really good at being present and entering the world of the other, becoming the same as the other, right? Listening. And most people, we think we listen well, but we're mainly listening to content. We're not listening to really feel and be with as the other. So listening creates coherence, relaxation, and sameness. And if we dwell there enough, pretty soon we're just meditating together. You know, because meditation is just listening, really. Kanzeon Bodhisattva became enlightened when she listened to the listener. And when she did, she heard the cries of the world. So listening, I think, is the most important. The question is, how can we also use difference to enliven? So if you think of it like acupuncture, you know, you can either use your needles to sedate or to soothe, and in this analogy, that would be listening, or you can use your needles to wake sluggish meridians up, right? It's a more stimulating intervention. So as a teacher, as a facilitator, I lots of times make interventions that are challenging to people, you know, that are disruptive to the way people think, that are a little bit frightening or a little bit scary sometimes. And that brings more wakefulness and aliveness into the system. And you also can do that, you know. You can, you know, at the Thanksgiving table, you can say, God damn it, why what you people won't let this election come to a close? And then you got to be prepared to work with it. I mean, that's the thing that the Zen master says, the mind of difference is difficult to achieve. You know, when we get into that state, it's very difficult to know how to be with it and to work with it. I'm not sure, Miles, if that helped you at all. Did that? Yeah? Okay, good. Good. Yeah, Jonas, please.
One thing I've noticed is that, like, if I'm gonna meditate with people or circle with people, I'll always often choose to do it with the people who are like more experienced. And I'm wondering, well, I don't know much about you, but I read that you work in courts, and I imagine that you like do mediation with a lot of people who have never gone anywhere near anything like this. And I'm wondering if that feels more like a chore for you, or if you found ways to really get joy from that as much as anything else.
Well, to be honest, I think that my role has changed a lot. So when I went to work, I was hired as the director of dispute resolution when I was 34, and I'm now 62. So it's been quite a long time ago, 30 years ago. And so I would say from 34, probably until I was about 45, most of my work was in the courts, and I worked on all kinds of mediations: barking dogs, child and family, transactional lawsuits, contract disputes, those kinds of things. And I started a lot of different programs. And then what happened at the end of that period is it was very interesting, you guys, you might find this interesting, but there were two things that are still kind of what I'm engaged in. One was that I started to see, so our court system generated a racial and ethnic fairness task force. And I was the facilitator that helped that project launch. And during that time, we were doing a lot of works on racial injustice in the court system in Utah. But interestingly enough, they just barely pulled the work that we did off the shelf again this last year after George Floyd. So I facilitated a lot of groups on working on issues related to race and racial justice. And, I started making observations, and I started seeing that there were certain people who I started using Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, because I saw these people who were like in denial. And then I saw these people who were like super angry. And then I saw these people who seemed to have struck a bargain of some kind. They'd found a place for themselves where they weren't getting disturbed. Then I saw these people who were just disillusioned and depressed. And I saw these amazing people who were just super free, and they could be angry and then let it go. And they could stand up and advocate really powerfully. And the next moment they could empathize. And I was like, what's going on here? And I was literally introduced to Ken Wilber's work like 3 months later. And then he gave me a developmental frame, and I realized what I was seeing was human development. I wasn't seeing, I was seeing a range of people's capacities to respond. I was seeing a stage development thing. And that's when I got interested in Ken's work. And so from my work in the courts, I went to work for Ken, did transformational workshops for him for years. And now I'm bringing the mediation work and what I learned working with Ken together. So I think that work was really great for me at the time. And I think at this point, I seem to be working with people. I'm training people a little bit more to help move consciousness right now. A little bit, you might say. Does that make sense? God, I start talking and then I just think, what? Jonas, what did you hear?
Is that figuratively, or you're wondering if you're connecting?
No, I'm wondering what you heard me say for sure.
Oh.
Like what actually landed in you from what I said?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I heard that you also moved away from the court system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had other opportunities open up that kind of were where my learning was, and it was really the whole, being and becoming are two very different processes. That, the state of being is innate in all of us at all times. The state of becoming is the evolutionary impulse. We're all growing and developing, as well as culture and the human experience. And so I think Ken taught me the evolutionary and developmental perspectives that I didn't have before that. So, yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah,
Jesse.
So I'm interested in working with difference. Is it a matter of like being better at self-regulating so that it feels less threatening, or what is crucial to know about how to work with difference gracefully?
Okay, and particularly when your own nervous system is triggered?
Right, because I can feel the threat of it.
Yeah, okay, so the first thing is to simply cognitively realize that you're in the grip of your brain is releasing adrenaline and cortisol. Your amygdala is signaling the brain basically to release those chemicals. That's what you're feeling. When you actually feel it, that's what it is. You're feeling adrenaline, you're feeling those hormones. Now, we all have different patterning for coping with that. And this idea of fight, flight, freeze, and then affiliate might be another one that people like to talk about these days. But basically, we all have, the conflict resolution literature is the same. It's like avoiders, right? People who accommodate or move into relationship, and people who fight. And those are the three trends. Those are the three. As soon as we start feeling that, we have a strategy usually. And the work that I do is to help people expand their strategy so they can do anything, right? So the first thing is to know that it's chemical. The second thing to do is to actually, and you can do this while you're with someone, or you can take yourself off to do this, is to sit, suspend cognition, and just let yourself feel what it feels like. And usually it's pretty intense and it's quite chaotic. And so it's hard for us to be with it. So basically you set aside your story and you use the breath to begin to calibrate and help you stay coherent with the feeling experience. Does that make sense, you guys, what I'm saying? Right? Okay. So, so right now I can feel a little bit of adrenaline. I can feel it mainly around my heart center because there's a kind of a pressure, I guess you might say, certain kind of a pressure. So one of the things that I invite people to do is to really make a distinction between sensation, where you don't ascribe any kind of an emotional name to it, and then feeling, where you give it a name like excited or anxious. Emotion, which is literally a mind-body feedback loop, where your thoughts are feeding the body and the body's feeding the mind. So you just want to stay on the level of sensation, Jesse. You just want to notice, what are the sensations? So if you were to just feel your body right now, what are some of the sensations that you're feeling in it, without making it necessarily describing it as an emotion? What do you notice and feel?
Tightness in my jaw. It's hard to say what, definitely something in my chest, like fear, but that's not a sensation.
No, that's a feeling. It's when you take the sensation and interpret it and give it a word.
Right, I know. Yeah. Fear is already getting abstract.
Yep.
There's some tightness, some tension.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So then you feel, and you use the breath, particularly the out breath, long exhales, to just let it'll start to settle. It takes 18 minutes. Once you've dosed yourself, it takes full 18 minutes for adrenaline to clear out of the body. Right? So, but your body will start to, within 30 seconds to a minute, if you breathe, you'll start to come into coherence and be able to tolerate the sensation more. And then you want to ask yourself the question, what is right about what I'm feeling? So if I were to ask you, Jesse, what's right about those feelings you're having right now?
They evolved to protect our ancestors, and so they got us here.
Yeah, absolutely. So and it could be something like, I care a lot about what we're talking about. It could be, I don't feel hurt and I want to be. It could be, I really don't want to hurt someone and I feel like I don't know how to do it without hurting someone. Like when you ask yourself that question, you'll be amazed how accurate what you have to say is. You know, everything you're trying to do in conversation, everything you're trying to do in relationship is super admirable. Humans are evolving how we relate to each other. We got to outgrow some old evolutionary patterning. You know, I always tell my students, we're building temples. You know, this isn't one generation's worth of work. You know, we're literally outgrowing our primitive impulses. So whatever you're feeling is completely legit. And once you've kind of worked with your nervous system and that triggering quality, then you can say, okay, what's right about it? What do I want? And you'll notice your cognition is much more kind of wise. you know. Yeah, so that's called the transmutation of emotion, and I learned it from my Tibetan Buddhist teacher. And there's a chapter on working with strong feelings in compassionate conversations, as well as, you know, what we call white fragility, which is a lot of times just a feeling, you know. Help people feel. That's my view. Don't shame people. Help them learn how to feel fully. Yeah, Christian. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a sort of preamble first. Yeah, like when I start to do more exercising recently, I noticed that I'm using less self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that it
Good.
was a lot of like teaching, like people teaching me to like do the self-talk, but once I actually feel into my body and the sensations of like working out, then I get out of the self-talk. So my question is, how much are we stuck with the Cartesian mind?
The Cartesian mind is simply the mind of division. I wouldn't say we're stuck with it. I would say that we have the opportunity to use it as the powerful tool that it is. But our knowing is certainly not limited to it by any means. You know, Ram Dass said, cognition, this ability to make distinctions, which is Cartesian, is a beautiful tool, but it's a terrible master. And in the Buddhist tradition, when we cultivate the mind of nirvana or the mind of sameness, what we see is that there is something that we call prajna, right? Innate, inherent, primordial wisdom. That there's a wisdom in the human being that doesn't rely on cognition, and that's actually available to us as well. And that compassion, for whatever reason, and wisdom, when one cultivates this deep state of awakened mind, that we have inherently wisdom and compassion. You know, we talk about the two wings of a bird. And that doesn't mean that we can't use analysis or dentistry or antibiotics or whatever. We can use that tool, but it always should be kept in the right proportion to this much deeper and more coherent type of knowing, right? And we can use the knowledge of shamans. We can work with the knowledge of storytellers. We can work with the knowledge of AI, and there's a place for all of that. But our most fundamental knowing is that awareness that has been with you since you were conceived. So it's a matter of getting it in right relationship, is what I would say. Right now we're out of relationship. So we've gotten super intoxicated with our capacity to manipulate the world. So nature's going to help us learn how to unlearn that. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed big time. So I'd love to hear a panel of contemplatives, shamans, climate scientists, and AI people. I'd like to see that panel talk about climate change. And community builders and activists. Yeah, that'd be a super cool panel. Miles.
Are you hopeful these days?
There's a poem by Rumi, which I love. It's called The Tavern. And in the poem by Rumi, you guys know Rumi, he's a Sufi poet, right? Like 13th century or 12th century. And he says, you know, that he's in this tavern and he's drunk. And he says, whatever brought me here is going to have to take me home. And that's how I feel. I feel, you know, whatever brought me into this situation, whatever gave me these teachings, whatever led me to being able to share and work with people the way I do, that I trust. I don't know where we're headed as a human community, but I do know what the teachings have offered me and where my commitments are and who the people I trust are. And I trust the very process. I trust my life. So, and I trust my suffering, and I trust my death. That's as good as it gets for me. There's a really nice, there's a reading of Coleman Barks, and he's with David Darling online. Maybe I'll just pull it up for you guys because it's super beautiful. You guys would probably all like it, where he reads this poem. And David Darling, who's a master cellist, kind of sets it to the blues, which is pretty cool to hear Rumi set to the blues. Let's see if I can find it for you guys. I don't know if I can. Here we go. I'll put it in the chat, and that way you guys can check it out. So it's very hopeful in the sense that, but I'm completely reliant on some other force. Okay, here we go. I'll put it in the chat. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. And then. Okay, when you get a chance. Aaron, are you ready? Have you guys had enough of me? I don't know. Had enough of this?
I opened that video and it just started playing immediately. So.
Yeah. Yeah. He's such a, you guys know, do you know Coleman Barks? Do you know his poetry? He's from Athens, Georgia, and his father was he was the headmaster at a private school in Georgia. And so he grew up in the context of this private school, and he memorized all the capitals of all the countries in the world. And there was a geography teacher, and they would pass each other in this like the quad, you know, at the college. And the geography teacher would shout out the name of a country, and Coleman would answer the name. And then the story goes that he shouted out the name of I don't know what country it was at the time, but he said Konya. And when he said that, he had this very powerful experience. And he was only like, 13 or something like that. And then he left and later went on to become a poet. And he developed this extremely profound relationship to Rumi. And Rumi's birthplace was Konya. And he is the foremost translator of Rumi's poetry in the West, and has made Rumi available. It's Coleman Barks translations that have made Rumi probably the most widely read poet now in the United States. So he's a bard. He's a genuine bard. So if you have a chance, listen to him read, because it's super awesome. You'll like it. Okay, Aaron, back to you.
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Roshi Diane. This was a really, really wonderful talk, experience, sharing time, and yeah, it was excellent. I'll just say a couple more little details about Dharma Gates and how you can get involved. So as I mentioned, you guys will all already be on the newsletter. You're welcome to unsubscribe, but you can find out about future events through there. We have a couple more events coming up in our fall practice series. So this was one of them, and we have two more. I think the last one will be on December 12th, and then we'll have maybe a couple things this winter. So I encourage you to come to those. They're all free, and you should definitely share and invite your friends. It's very, very helpful. Aside from that, I know that a lot of, so Dharma Gates is a nonprofit organization, and we are supported entirely by donation. So the extent to which this project and these sessions are valuable to you, I just encourage you to keep us in mind as you go forward with your life. And if you are a person with resources, to consider where you're putting those and what's important. And if you aren't, just keep us in mind, and maybe at some point you will be a person with resources, and then know that things like this happen because there's actual money on the back end that makes things work. And so, yeah, we'd encourage you to come to stuff, share, keep us in mind as you move forward. You can always fill out our advising service or reach out to us or Miles too, and we're happy to talk to you about anything related to practice or anything that came up in response to this session. And yeah, that's all I really have. So thank you again.
Great. Yeah, and you guys feel free to reach out to me too. I'm doing an online retreat starting December, 6th, I think. And DianeMushoHamilton.com if you're interested in mediation and communications work. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it.
If you'd like, you can send me the link to the retreat registration and I can just send it to everybody.
Okay, I'll do that. And also, I will donate the stipend you were going to give to me, and all I need is a receipt for that.
Oh, thank you.
To Dharma Gates. Okay. All right. Peace, everybody.
Right.
See you later.